Business is the zoning enforcement officer's report. Monica?
Good evening. You have my report in front of you, and as you can see from last month, as far as the residential permits, we are down a little, but our office is extremely busy, and we're a little down from our business applications as well. And as far as our complaints, it averages out. But if you have any questions or concerns, you can email me or let me know.
Any observations or anything that we need to talk?
No, nothing here.
Everything looks cool? Okay. Mr. Flanagan, application 2244.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'm just recovering from the flu, so I'll hope to keep my voice for the meeting. Wanted to just describe what happened with 2244. The application came into us on February 28th. It did not make it onto your March agenda. It made it onto your April agenda, and it was a staff error. After your last meeting, when you scheduled the public hearing for June 14th, after that meeting, I went back to the office, counted the days, and realized that you'd be beyond the 65 days if you had the hearing on June 14th. So I immediately contacted Attorney Mark Ziogas, and on page 13 of your electronic packet, there is a letter from Attorney Mark Ziogas, dated April 13th, the day after your last meeting. And he's requesting on behalf of his applicant, 10 Main and South LLC, granting the commission a 35-day extension to open the public hearing on June 14th, 2017. So a motion would be in order from your board, if you would so choose, Mr. Chairman, to act on that request and make it public record that you're acknowledging that the 35-day extension is being availed of, and you'll be opening that public hearing on June 14th.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay. I want to read that in, just that we're going to continue. That's application 2244.
It's on page 13 of your electronic packet. If you just read that letter into the record, I think it would be good.
All right, well, I'll do it. Dear Commissioners, it's to the Zoning Commission from, as you mentioned, Attorney Mark Ziogas. Dear Commissioners, as the attorney for 10 Main and South LLC, my client to grants, this really is what it says, LLC, my client to grants the Commission a 35-day extension to open the public hearing and agree to a public hearing date of June 14th, 2017. Yours truly.
Okay. You want to just make a motion? Yep.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that the request from the applicant, 10 Main and South LLC, for a 35-day extension of the statutory time limit for the opening of the public hearing to June 14, 2017 on application number 2244.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded. Roll call vote, please. Commissioner Lemire?
Yes.
Commissioner Provenzano?
Yes?
Commissioner Albert?
Yes.
Commissioner DeMastro?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Okay. Next order of business will be our receipt of new applications, of which there are 3 of them.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Application 2253, special permit to construct a single-family residence with an accessory dwelling unit at 1321 Burlington Avenue, Assessor's Map 58, Lot 7-1, Kevin Savage, applicant. Along with that, application 2254, site plan to construct a single-family residency with an accessory dwelling unit at 1321 Burlington Ave, Assessor's Map 58, Lot 7-1, Kevin Savage, applicant. And then finally, application 2255, special permit to use part of an existing building as a church at 2 Divinity Street, Assessor's Map 28, Lot 62A, Miguel Mendoza, applicant.
Okay, and I discussed this with Mr. Flanagan, the city planner. We are very much bogged down for June. So what we're going to do is, and we're within our right because of the 65-day limit, we are going to schedule these for the July 12th meeting. So if you could just...
Mr. Chairman, I move that application number 2253, special permit to construct a single-family residence with an accessory building unit at 1321 Burlington Avenue, Assessor's Map 58, Lot 7-1, Kevin Savage, applicant, be scheduled for public hearing at the July 12, 2017 regular meeting of the Zoning Commission. I further move that application 2254, site plan to construct a single-family residence with an accessory building unit at 1321 Burlington Avenue. Assessors map 58, lot 7-1. Kevin Savage, applicant, be scheduled for a public hearing at July 12th, 2017, regular meeting of the Zoning Commission. And lastly, I move that application 2255, special permit to use part of an existing building as a church at 2 Divinity Street, Assessors map 28, lot 62A, Miguel Mendoza, applicant, be scheduled for a public hearing at the July 12, 2017, regular meeting of the Zoning Commission.
Very well done. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is made and second. Roll call vote, please. Commissioner Lemire?
Yes.
Commissioner Provenzano?
Yes.
Commissioner Albert?
Yes?
Commissioner DeMastro?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Okay. Next order of business is going to be our public hearings, of which we have 5. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Commissioner Lemire to read the public hearing protocol, please.
Secretary will read the description of the application into the record. Staff will identify for the record any correspondence associated with the application. The applicant and/or his or her representative will present the application. During the presentation, the Commission and its staff may ask the applicant and/or her representatives questions about the application. After the applicant has completed his or her presentation, the hearing will be opened up to any member of the public who wishes to speak about the application. Those who wish to speak in favor of the application will be heard from first. Those who wish to speak against the application will be heard from next. Because the public hearing is being recorded, if you wish to speak, you will need to come to the podium, speak clearly into the microphone, give your name and your address for the record, and then make your comments. Your comments should be specific to the application before the Commission. Any questions that you want the applicant to answer should be directed to the Chair of the Commission, who will keep track of all questions and then ask the applicant to respond to each of them later in the public hearing. After everyone from the public who wishes to speak has spoken, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond to any public comments and to answer the questions that the public has asked. After the applicant has finished with his or her responses, the public will again be given the opportunity to speak. However, in the second round of public participation, only those people who spoke the first time will be allowed to speak again. After the public has finished speaking, staff will be given an opportunity to comment on the application. After the applicant, the public, and the staff have finished speaking, the Commission will close the public hearing by a motion, second, and vote. However, if the Commission feels that it needs additional information, it can vote to continue the public hearing to another meeting. After the public hearing is closed, the voting members of the Commission will discuss the application and its merits. A motion, second, and vote of the Commission is required for an approval or denial of the application.
Thank you very much. And when we wrote this up, I neglected to put in at the end, because some people look at the end when we do a vote, it's a majority vote. Now, there are 5 commissioners that will be sitting on the application, so you must get a 3 out of 5 for an approval. Okay, first application that we're going to be listening to tonight is going to be application 2246.
All right, you want me to read that to record? Yep. Okay. Application 2246, change of zone from R15, single-family residential zone, to an R15/BT, which is single-family residential downtown neighborhood transition overlay zone, at lot number 253 Main Street, Assessors Map 26, and lot 253. Carrier Construction Incorporated, applicant.
Anything, Mr. Flanagan?
Mr. Chairman, I think that you wanted to, first of all, describe who's seated for this meeting?
Yes, and we also should mention the email.
After you,
Okay.
I think after you seat him.
We've already said that Commissioner Lemire will be sitting.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. The other thing we should mention before this is that, for the record, there was emails received by 3 of the commissioners, and the commissioners realized and were told not to respond to the email. Anything that should come to this commission should come through the city planner first. So I wanted to put that on the record because that could be a little iffy for us. Anything else, Mr. Flanagan?
And Mr. Chairman, if you just wanted to describe who received the email,
Yeah.
and that they did not respond.
Let's see, Commissioner DeMastro, Commissioner Albert, and myself.
And no one responded to that email?
No one responded.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if you just allow me, I just want to introduce the documents that are in the file and then certainly let the applicant make this presentation. The application starts on page 34 of your electronic packet. We have a locator map on page 37 of your packet. We have a zoning map on page 38. We have a land use map on page 39. We have a larger zoning context on page 40. On page 41, we have the age of the homes in that particular block. On page 42, we have the referral of the zone change from the zoning commission, from you folks, to the planning commission. On page 43, we have the referral back from the planning commission. It was a negative referral. And that means tonight, if this application were to be approved, you would need a supermajority. You would need 4 of 5 votes to approve the zone change. On page 44, we had referred the item out to the Council of Governments in Hartford. Council of Governments responded in Hartford and said that the application is not within 500 feet of a border. They had no interest in the application. Same with the Northwest Hills COG. They found no regional implications. Negative Naugatuck Valley COG, same response, no regional implications. We also referred it out to our town and city clerk. It's on file in the clerk's office, and then we filed the application, we referred the application to all the surrounding municipalities, and there was no comment received back. And then, of course, we have the map provided by the applicant. I will have comments towards the end, and I'll just await the hearing to take place. Thank you.
For the applicant?
Attorney Timothy Fury, 43 Bellevue Avenue, Bristol, Connecticut, representing the applicant carrier. Just to note, although I think it's great that all the abutting municipalities and the regional planning agencies found no conflict, I just want to make it clear, and I discussed it briefly with Mr. Flanagan in the hallway, none of those referrals were required. That's only required if the application is within 500 feet of a town boundary, or if it has a significant impact on an adjacent town. And given this is dead in the center of Bristol, it did not need to be referred. And for this application, I think it's nice that I got in the record that everybody thinks it's okay, but for all my other applications, I really don't think we ought to be making...
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Attorney Fury. I realize that the error, and we won't be making it again. Thank you very much for your comments.
So when we look at a zone amendment, and as Mr. Flanagan pointed out, because this required a referral to the Planning Commission, and that referral could change the voting mix, it is not a simple majority on this application. We need 4 of the 5 votes to receive approval on this. That's not always the case with a planning referral. Some are just advisory. This is advisory, but it does flip to 1 vote. So we first look at the plan of development, which was worked on by this commission and the Planning Commission to set the goals, if you will, for what we're meaning to do within zoning in our various sections of town. In our plan of development was just adopted several years ago. It was very clear for the downtown area that we intended to reinforce an appropriate mix of uses in the downtown area. We intended to encourage a provision for attractive and appropriate housing. This commission, in working on the downtown plans and the zoning regulations, noted that the housing in the downtown area, most of it is older, and there's a need within the city of Bristol to have more updated and appropriate housing to attract the kind of people we need in Bristol in general and in the downtown area. And our population is getting older, so there's a need to have more appropriate housing opportunities for people such as me. The residents and this commission and the development of the zoning regulations have recognized in the plan of development that we need to attract people downtown to support businesses so they can be sustainable downtown. We've been unsuccessful with many restaurants, 2 closed within the past 2 years, and the market has been unsuccessful because there just has not been the interest and or volume to support it. And they want the housing stock to be attuned to the current and future needs of the resident. That's a more modern, finished housing stock. And we've seen when those opportunities are presented, they are able to be rented, similar to the more modern house on the curve of Summer Street that was able to be rented with more modern finishes at much higher rates. In the mix of uses that we want to attract downtown, residences was more important. And a focal point of the policies for the downtown was to encourage intensive development downtown, suitable for a city of Bristol size, and to encourage the provision of new housing units at appropriate locations in the downtown area. As I indicated, most of our housing stock in the plan of development notes was built before 1970. Most of the housing in the downtown area, virtually everything in the city of Bristol built before 1940, is on the BDA's list of significant housing, and virtually all of it is subject to lead paint rules. Anything before 1978 is subject to all those type of pressures. With the third plan, if you will, in place for the Depot Square, I'm not sure what it's called now, but the project, it's become very evident with the new plans that we are not going to have the intensive development or the residential development on the Depot Square that would have helped achieve these goals. That just hasn't happened. It's been a number of years. As you all know, I was intimately involved in that project, and larger scale construction could not be fiscally achieved working within the realities of how these projects get financed unless it was done utilizing either workforce housing models, low-income housing models, or those type of things, which it became very clear that the city was not interested in. The only way we're going to be able to achieve the planning goals for the downtown is to utilize the other creative means we have to encourage people to either reutilize existing properties in a more dense manner and upgrade them, or to reutilize empty properties or make properties empty to create new building opportunities on them. And to do that in an efficient manner, you developed the area known as the Downtown Neighborhood Transition Zone to create those opportunities. And in creating those opportunities, you put in a lot of protections in there to assure that if it is done in a more intensive way, that this commission has a great level of control to review it. So the goals of the neighborhoods are met, and the goals of the downtown plan of development and the zoning regulations are met. This lot is directly across the street. I'm not sure if you have electronically or you just have in their packets.
Attorney Fury, it's in their packets. And also I printed out the maps for them this evening, so I can give you a copy if you'd like.
No, I have the ones you gave me at the planning commission. That's
Yes.
what we're talking about.
Yep.
So in your packets, utilizing the GIS plan, Mr. Flanagan was able to create a series of maps that more easily show you the policy decisions that go into this decision. And it is a policy decision at that. If, and I'm not sure if they're in the same order as
I believe they're in the same order, Attorney Fury.
Okay. So the first GIS map he has just shows in a blue square this property and all of the buildings around it. But more instructive is the second one, which shows this property in blue and shows the overlay zone around it. And that is what is in the cross-hatched in red. And it actually goes far off the map and up and into across Center Street and into Mr. Zipp's industrial building where the brewery currently is.
Attorney Fury, I apologize for interrupting. It may be a bit out of order. Can you just refer to the map that you're referring to now? And when you flip to the map, just call out the title. Is it larger zoning map that you're referring to now?
No, I'm referring to still the smaller.
And it just says application 2246 on the face of it.
And they all say that on the top.
Yeah.
But it just says 2246. Is that correct? It's this map here, Attorney Fury, that you're referring to.
Robert, let me see it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the right order.
I just want to make sure they're looking at the right map.
Yep. So this is, because it's across the street, an extension of a light zone. When we initially began exploring the reuse of this property and the rezoning of it, Mr. Flanagan and I postulated about how the zoning was done in the way it was and why this block, if you will, was not included in the overlay zone. And there doesn't appear to be any rationale that we find. It just is not. My law office down Bellevue Avenue is included in the zone. The funeral homes are included in the zone. The convalescent home is included in the zone, which I don't know if it's permitted anyway. And the overlay zone really doesn't do anything for the whole south side of, west side of Bellevue Avenue. It really doesn't accomplish anything, but it really does apply when you look at the uses in the block in which we are located, and it does apply because it's within the zone across the street. If you look at the third, the last, if you look at the third map, which has the small key in the upper right left-hand corner, you can see that within the block that we're on are commercial buildings, 3-family homes, 4-family homes, several 3-family homes, a couple single-family homes, but it's very intensely developed block. Starting at the corner of Bellevue and Maple, well, that's a large stone/sided building that has been a group home for most of my life, and just recently was decommissioned as a group home, I guess, and I guess it's being used as a multi-family house. The next house down from that was actually the founder of our law firm, Judge Malone's old home. That's the one with the beautiful rounded porches on it. It was for sale. It was in a little bit of disrepair, but the folks who originally restored it, and it's still just a beautiful home, but it lost some of its luster when the next home down, which is noted as 83 in the street, was allowed, after denial by this commission, to become a group home of sorts for people with alcohol problems. So the folks in Judge Malone's beautiful home get to share their driveway and garage with 15, I'm assuming, or so, I don't know where it's finally settled there, folks with alcohol problems. It's not the most well-maintained property. The next home at the corner of Bellevue and Sessions is at least a 3-family home. It says 3 here, and it's a large structure. It's well-maintained. The 2 on Sessions Street, which are listed as 4 families, one is boarded up, has been boarded up for 5 or 7 years. I don't know why it's remained that way. One is occupied. And then we have the large commercial building down Main Street that is a renovated multifamily. The gentleman did a nice job, took it over after Dr. Lucy sold, and really did a great job renovating that. He has better end rents. And across the street from us is a combination of a number of commercial buildings and multifamily houses and there is one single-family house basically across from Session Street, which I think was where Mr. Cohen lives. It was previously a doctor's residence. So, but it is clearly, it's Main Street, Bristol. It's an integral part of the downtown. And the three-family directly to the north of us was reconstructed after a fire. So that is there. It's not anything that architecturally appealing, but it's there. And it simply makes sense that if we really want to put our money where our mouth is with the downtown, that the opportunity be given to redevelop this under the auspices of the BT transition zone. Question came up, and was even suggested by the town planner, that we should get all the neighbors of that block together and see if they all want to change. Well, that's not really our role. If the commission felt that based on the uses I just described to you and the location of that block, it should be done, that's something the commission should consider. We're concerned about this property is an extension of a like zone. It's not spot zoning. And if you look at the BT transition zone requirements, it does permit more intensive development on this site. Charlie Talmadge, who's our planner, is here, and he's going to outline for you an example of what could be done there and some of the limits of the site. But it's subject to strict controls on the site and any approvals that we would seek to obtain that this board fully has. More so than the three-family when it was redeveloped just to the north of us. There was no control. They had a right to rebuild the three-family, and they did, and it is what it is. Here, if you look at your downtown transition zone regulations, which what I printed started on page 48, you only get any use for a multifamily home has to be obtain a special permit. And with that special permit goes all of the things that you normally associate with a special permit. Has to be adequate water, sewer, has to be adequate drainage, has to be consistent with the neighborhood, has to be adequate parking and traffic and circulation. But then you, in your regulations, you provided a series of additional requirements, and you added in section D a series of other requirements, one of which is the project's impact on historic and architecturally significant properties and buildings, including those listed on the historic resources inventory, proximity of the project to neighborhood retail and service establishments, and the quality of the project's building design, buildings that incorporate architectural features which complement or are compatible with the architectural characteristics of neighboring buildings will be given more favorable consideration. So the commission said, we recognize that we need more intensive things to happen, but we're going to look at them with a more limited eye and include the right to look at the architectural design. You've looked at one other of these, and you may remember, we came in with a different applicant, or I came in for what was I think it was called the Elms on West Street. Now that was an existing structure with an existing density, but we came in for a special, but it was like not a reasonably, it wasn't a fully well-maintained building, but a reasonably attractive building, and their application included all kinds of architectural review and fenestration changes and landscaping changes that you reviewed, insisted on, and approved. They have not been able to get their funding yet because that is a veterans-based project, and they're still working with the Department of Housing to square that away. But hopefully they will get their funding and they will be able to implement that. But you have a series of checks and controls to address any of the concerns, on which I'm sure we're going to hear tonight from some of the neighbors about what we do. Now, at the Planning Commission level, we were not able to receive their positive approval, but one of the reasons why is they kept asking us over and over, well, what are you going to do? What's it going to look like? And we were trying to explain to them, well, that's not yet. But we gave them some ideas of the density and the type of thing that we felt could be achieved there. Charlie had, and they wanted to know, everyone wants to know what the end game is. And I'm saying, well, it's a process. First the zone change, then a special permit and a site plan together. And they expressed some concerns about that. The other thing that they expressed concerns is they were concerned that the zone would leak across to Spring Street and to the other side of Center Street. Well, that's not within our control. That could happen now because the overlay zone goes up to the center of Center Street, all from Main Street down towards North Main, from Main Street down to North Main Street. These zones exist, and if someone wished to ask, they could ask to push the overlay zone across Center Street. But that's a policy decision of this commission, depending how the rest of the downtown goes. And you may very well want to give some more creative basis for the neighborhood north of Center Street. And you may say, no, that's the limit of the area. The Planning Commission, in my opinion, didn't trust anything that changed or allowed discretion to make those decisions. And if it was that simple, we wouldn't need the commissions. The commissions are to judge these things and decide where it is appropriate, not appropriate. I just believe, based on what we know our goals of this, of the regulations we've designed are, the location of this on Main Street, a few hundred yards from the Bristol Library, a few hundred yards from the Depot Square site, where we know we're not going to get housing, that this is an appropriate location to see if these creative opportunities can exist. And one thing that's woefully obvious to me anyway, is this is an R15 zone. So the denial of this application without other planning changes, zoning text changes, says that the appropriate thing for this lot is a single-family house at the top of Main Street. So we'll get, a crappy cape or something, and you're not going to get, we're not going to achieve any of our goals that we have here. And I just think that that's inconsistent. It's not putting our money where our mouth is for all the things we've been trying to achieve and wearing all our other hats in trying to develop downtown Bristol. And mostly because the Planning Commission was there, I would like my design professional, Charlie, to get up for a minute and give you an example, because we have done preliminary design work on the site. And we'd like to give you some examples of what his research has shown. It is clear, and I don't want to force Mr. Flanagan to need to say it, this is not an application. We would have to come in with an application. This is just giving you an analysis of the type of thing that could occur. If this were granted and a formal application were filed, we would have to do a site plan, get a special permit, prove there was adequate parking, prove the layout work that didn't affect the neighborhood in a negative way, prove the architecture was consistent and complementary, and on and so forth. So with that, I'll turn it over to Charlie Towers, unless you have questions of me at this point. Okay, Charlie.
Questions, commissioners, at all?
Charlie? Okay, Charlie.
Good evening, Commissioners. Charlie Talmadge, 73 Meadow Street. I'm the principal at Development Planning Solutions. And as Tim mentioned, this is a conceptual... Can you just let the microphone? Is that better, Nancy? Yeah. This is a conceptual design for the lot at 253 Main Street. It is not an engineered plan in any sort, but it is designed to the level of detail that I can confidently say that the uses that we are proposing, which would be a unified residential development, fit on the site. They meet all the design criteria. They fit within the setbacks, the height, bulk, and area requirements, the parking requirements, etc., for two 4-unit buildings on that property. We chose a concept of 2 buildings to limit our bulk and area to a scale that was more appropriate for the neighborhood. It encompasses 14 parking spaces, some of which are in garages underneath the structure, some of which are on the surface. And what it ultimately ends up being is 2.5 floors of residential units, single-bedroom residential units above. And I feel like we can make a project of this scale and bulk work on this site. I wanted to put a concept in front of you folks so that you got a flavor of what we're proposing to do. Again, this is a zone change application, so you have to consider all of the uses that the BT zone would allow, but in the interest of full discretion, this is our intent. And if anybody has any questions on the design itself, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions, commissioners, or if not, I will open it up to the public at this point. Mr. Flanagan, did you want to add anything at this point, or do you want to just,
I'll wait to the end.
you want good to go for opening it up? Okay. All right, at this point, what we're going to do is open up this application to the public participation. Let me just quickly go through what Commissioner Lemire said before. We're going to ask those people who would like to speak in favor of the application to come up first. Give your name and your address for the record, please. We will then ask people who would wish to deny the application, that are not in favor of the application, to come up and do likewise. We will then give the attorney a chance to respond. We will then go to a second round, which would be exactly like the first round. However, the one stipulation of the rule that we have is if you do not speak in the first round, you are ineligible to speak in the second round. So, at this point, if there's anyone that would like to come up and speak in favor of this application, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, please. All right. So, now, if there's anyone who would like to come up and speak against this application, would you please come up, state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Steve Cohen. I live at 331 Main Street. First, I have a letter here from my neighbor at 341 Main Street.
Robert, should I read it into the record?
Unless Mr. Cohen wants to do that.
Okay.
I could read it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. It's dated May 8th. It's from my neighbor, Robert Thibodeau. Lives in a single-family home at 341 Main Street. Dear Commissioners, unfortunately, due to a prior commitment, I am unable to attend this hearing. I am a lifelong resident of Bristol and lived at 341 Main Street since 1958. I have asked Steve Cohen to read this letter in opposition to the proposed zone change on Main Street. I cannot begin to imagine anything more inappropriate and insensitive than to allow more high-density housing in this neighborhood. For years, I have watched this area deteriorate due to more and more apartments being allowed with and without permits. However, in the past 10 years, things have changed. I have seen new people move into the neighborhood. Homes that were cut into apartments have been converted back to their original intended use as single-family dwellings. The large buildings are mostly gone, and the police activity has become non-existent. Crime is significantly down, and there is a peace in the neighborhood that has been missing for a very long time. I am proud of my street again. I am no longer embarrassed to say that I live there. Please deny this application as it will only cause harm. We have more than our fair share of apartments. I know you will make the right decision. Robert Thibodeau, 341 Main Street. My wife and I have lived at 331 Main Street for 22 years in a single-family house. Now, contrary to what you've heard tonight from Attorney Fury, there are more than just a couple of single-family homes in that neighborhood. There are quite a few, in fact. When I first moved to Main Street, the area from Center down to Main on Summer Street, there were no single-family houses anymore, not one. There are 4 now, all converted back. I listened to Attorney Fury talk about appropriate housing. I guess I live in inappropriate housing. I didn't know that. I also heard him say numerous times that this neighborhood is the downtown. It is not. It has never been. It is Federal Hill. When you travel up Main Street, northbound, once you pass into the trestle, you're on Federal Hill. It's not downtown anymore. My neighbors and I have worked very hard for over 20 years to eliminate high-density housing. It is the cause of crime, drugs, and all kinds of unsavory activity that I'm sure none of you would want in your neighborhood. We've worked very hard to get rid of this type of housing. And we've been very successful. A lot of the large buildings are gone now. We've had buildings converted back to lower density. I bought the house 2 houses up from me and converted it back to a 2-family. I bought 70 Summer Street behind me and converted it back to a single family. Apartments are nothing but trouble in this neighborhood. There's no land there. If you're talking about this lot that they're referring to, maybe it's a 1/4 acre. I don't know. A single family house is what belongs there. There was a house that was foreclosed on by the city. My neighbor stepped out for a minute. Kevin McCauley was a councilman at the time. The house was taken over in foreclosure. And the city put the house up for sale. But the provision was that the house remain a single family house. Someone came along and bought it. It was 85% restored on this lot. And somebody set it on fire. I think it was around 2006, 2007, somewhere around there. And it burned to the ground. But the reason the city wanted a single family house there is for the reason that I'm telling you. This type of housing, we have too much of it. And we have watched the result, the positive result of getting rid of high density housing. It doesn't make sense there. The streets are narrow, the neighborhood is old and it's tired, and we don't need any more multifamily houses. Attorney Fury talked about an end game. I'll tell you what the end game is, folks. It's a slum. Go down to Munchausen and Bartholomew Avenue, and you can see the results of this type of zoning and what it has done to that neighborhood. It is a slum. Drive down there. Keep your doors locked. Not a good area. Because they've allowed multifamily houses on teeny tiny lots. And you've got a slum down there. I don't care what this looks like. It's too much. It's too much housing. We don't need it. We don't want it. All right? And Attorney Fury doesn't live in the neighborhood. I also didn't hear him state his address, by the way. Might want to check the record on that. But he doesn't live in the neighborhood. Neither does this developer. This is a national registered district. And I think we've forgotten that. And as you pick away at the national registered district by inappropriate development such as this, you run the risk of destroying and losing the listing. And people cannot take advantage of tax credits. And people cannot take advantage of other things, that protections that there are with the National Registered District. The neighborhood is also on the state register. I think this overlay zone, and I've brought this up before to this commission, should be moved right off of Federal Hill. Right off. And put it downtown. You've got 18 acres down here If you want to build things like this down here, have fun. This neighborhood is special. We have some of the greatest houses probably in central Connecticut, right on Federal Hill. This neighborhood, High Street, Upper Main, Prospect, Session Street, Arnold Court, Center Street, has been absolutely brutalized for decades because of absentee landlords. And that's what this would be, another absentee landlord. What also was failed, that Attorney Fury failed to mention was, there are some multifamilies up in this neighborhood. What he didn't tell you is, a lot of them are owner occupied. And you can see the result of that. There's a great value in that. I think you all realize that. There's a great value in having, if you're going to have a 2-family or a 3-family, to have them owner occupied. That person is going to make sure that they have the right kind of tenants and that the property is maintained because they live there too. I don't like the idea of our neighborhood being used for whatever agenda is going on down here. Whatever is planned for the downtown, that's fine. I don't really care. But not up there. Because if you allow this zone change here, you'll allow it anywhere. And if Attorney Fury gets his zone change here, you can better believe that the next time he wants to go a street over or a block over or 2 streets over or 10 streets over, he's going to point right back to this application. He's going to say, well, you allowed it here, and it's not fair that you didn't allow, that you're not allowing it here, but you allowed it on Main Street. It's a very bad precedent if this application is approved. I don't know what else to say. I don't believe there are anything good that can come of this. This is not, I realize that your decisions are made you look at the whole picture. It's for the good of the city, or is it not for the good of the city? This is just to make one person money. That's all this is about. Has nothing to do with the preservation of the neighborhood, has nothing to do with whether the residents like it or don't like it. It's all about the almighty dollar. It's all this is. Why else would you shoehorn 10 apartments into a tiny lot like that? It's ridiculous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there a...
Holly. I live at 19 Spring Street. MC, capital C-A-U-L-E-Y. Except for 7 years, I've lived in Bristol my whole life. I grew up on 209 Center Street, which is on the corner of Spring and Center. I own the house 2 houses down from 209 Center. I am really against this. I have lived in the middle of it for too long. Actually, I have a question. This is my neighbor's, if I could just hand it.
Sure.
And I actually had put together a packet. I put together a packet of some photographs and then a list of the streets and all the multi and single family homes. Is that something I can give you folks, if you don't mind?
Would you like to read that into the record, or would you have us read it into the record?
I don't think it's anything to be read into the record.
This one.
Oh, this, yes,
Yeah.
if you wouldn't mind
Okay.
reading into the record.
And those are photos that you're just, or drawings that you're going to pass to the commission?
Yeah,
Chairman?
I think
Okay.
there's.
All right, while you're doing that, I'll start reading the letter. Planning and Zoning Commission, this is dated May 7th, 2017. Due to work out of state, I'm unable to attend the meeting regarding the proposed development of an 8-unit apartment building slated for Main Street in Bristol. I'm exceptionally concerned with this proposition for numerous reasons. I'm dumbfounded as to how the city can rationally warrant the building of such a large tenant architecture with parking on only 1/2 acre. There's absolutely no way someone can convince me that there will be sufficient and ample parking for the tenants of this property. Statistically, most households have an average 2 people dwelling in a home or apartment. Having said that, there needs to be 2 parking spaces per unit, with each parking space being the standard 9 feet by 18 feet. If not, realistically, they will be parking on the street, which is a significant hazard at the top of Main Street. Furthermore, being pragmatic, the tenants will have people over. Where will they park? A fluff answer is not sufficient because they will end up parking on the street. So at any given time, this property would have a minimum of 16 and up to, being conservative, 36 people on a half acre with no ample parking provisions. My fear is that overflow parking will commence on my street, Spring Street. There are already problems with vehicles parking on Main Street illegally across from the library. I've witnessed numerous potential accidents because people are trying to get around these illegal cars. Now we as citizens in Bristol will have to deal with it at the top of Main Street on a daily basis, which is an already dangerous intersection of Main and Center Street. Additionally, I live across from the brownstone apartment on Spring Street, where I constantly have 2 to 3 cars parking right in front of my home, sometimes blocking part of my driveway. I do not need more cars parking on my street that do not need to be there. Secondly, Bristol wants to revitalize the downtown area, which I am a huge proponent of. I cannot see how an 8-unit apartment building will enhance the Main Street downtown area. Federal Hill is a historic area of Bristol that draws couples and families to purchase homes in this part of Bristol. 2 houses on Spring Street recently sold very quickly and for commanding prices to professional families. A larger unit apartment building does not add value or any value whatsoever to the Federal Hill area, but rather deprecates it greatly. I am sure that there are plenty of other locations in Bristol that are better suited for a large multi-unit apartment complex than that would be built on only a half acre. I want to see the Federal Hill downtown area grow and develop, but not with this apartment building. I implore the committee to deny this proposal. Let's make the historical and downtown area desirable again, instead of allowing inappropriately placed apartments with potentially significant rose hazards associated with it. If the committee has any questions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you for your time, and do hope you take this letter with serious regards. Cynthia Chesky, 27 Spring Street, Bristol, Connecticut.
As I was saying, we have too many multifamilies. I went around and did some counting, and in a approximately half-mile square radius, we end up with over 70 multifamily homes. And that's just the homes themselves. It's not the amount of people in each home. And we all know that once something is built, it's very hard to police. And I have called on numerous occasions different departments for different reasons. Snow, people parking in the street, and snowstorms are coming, and the tenants are clueless. And so I have to try to get it moved, and the police are inundated because they have other issues to deal with the snow. People leaving the apartments at 1 and 2 in the morning and slamming their doors, and they're parking in front of my home because I too live across from the 4-family townhouse that Tom Zip owns, and the N unit has 4 people in it. Supposed to have 4 people in it. There are 6, and 2 of them are children, and they have 4 vehicles. So to say that one apartment you're going to allow 1.5 cars or whatever it is, it's ridiculous. We know that's not going to happen. The absentee landlord thing probably speaks for itself. I have issues with people who put their trash barrels out and they leave them out. They don't bring them back in. I have complained about that, and then they say, well, we have to write a letter to the landlord. Well, it gets ignored, and another letter has to be sent out. But there's no provision for ticketing the landlords if the trash continues to be left out. And then they just pile it up. And there are more people than are on lease living there because I'm a family of 4. My trash is not filled and overflowing onto the side. There still are crime issues. I know where Lower Summer Street is, that meets Main Street, that whole apartment area there. The police have been there multiple times. There's active drug use. I've actually seen people doing drug deals as they run across the street in front of the library, and car pulls up and they put their hand through the window and away they go. And that's just me driving up Main Street to my house. This is nothing more than somebody wanting to make more money. And that little lot, that lot is meant to be a single-family home. That's what was there. It was burned down. I saw it burn down. And I just can't even imagine putting anything else other than a single-family home. And yes, I would certainly take a lousy cake over an 8-unit apartment building. There's some really beautiful homes on Federal Hill. There are a lot of them. And to say that it's, that it really won't matter, it will really matter. It's all the issues that go along with having these multi-family homes. They just abound. I could go on and on about all the issues I've had to deal with. And it is a historic hill. It is Federal Hill. And we really would like to keep the character of it. And I'm hoping that you folks do the right thing and deny this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Yes, my name is James Rhinesmith. I own the property immediately to the south of this open lot.
Can you spell your last name, please?
R-H-I-N-E-S-M-I-T-H,
And your address?
368 Main Street. Not only is my home a single-family home of historical worth, but my neighbor across the street and others in the neighborhood. What is proposed here is not something that fits that neighborhood at all. A building with ground level parking under the building, when you consider too that each of these levels, because there'll be 2 living levels above that, 12 to 14 feet, 36 to 40 feet, that height and dimension of building does not fit that neighborhood at all. There is, of course, the parking problem, because there is no parking on the street on Main Street. There's only residential parking on Sessions Street, and there's no parking up on Center Street. So any guests would have to hike quite some time. It doesn't seem possible that this is really, no matter what the attorney says, an ideal situation for this type of building. He talks, as part of the selling point, this would be very good for 55 and older people. Are they really planning elevators in each of these buildings? Walk-in showers, doorways that are wide enough to accommodate wheelchairs, etc., for the elderly, or the over 55, because they may be over 55 today. 10 years they'll be 65, and then they'll be 70. And they all have to be considered. So I don't really see that as probably something that they were willing to invest in. Also, the architecture of that does not at all fit in a historic district. The neighborhood is one that is getting progressively better.